My name's Lara. I'm one of the nurses at Kidney Cancer UK. I'd like to introduce you to our guest speaker tonight, Dr. Antonio Rullan, who's the Principal Clinical Research Fellow and Honorary Medical Oncology Consultant at the Royal Free Hospital London and UCL London. So we're honoured to have him back speaking on clinical trials and research. So thank you very much. And I'm going to hand over to Dr. Antonio Rullan now.
Hi, hello. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Lara, and thank you very much everyone for joining. So as Lara said, I'm a medical oncology consultant working at the Royal Free in kidney cancer, working with kidney cancer patients, and I also do early phase clinical trials at the Royal Free. I'm a clinical academic working also across University College London. And I'm going to give you a presentation about current clinical trials and current research happening. So these are my disclosures. I don't think they affected in any way my presentation, but just for full transparency, I put them there. And this is the outline of the talk. So the first thing I'm going to say is I'm going to explain what a clinical trial is, some very basic concepts just to set the scene. Then I'm going to talk about trials that are happening currently in renal cancer in the different settings. So at the very beginning, when patients have a small renal mass and the treatments are localized, to then tumors that are a bit larger and they have risk of relapse even after surgery. And then the last bit about when the cancer spread and we treat with treatment that goes for the whole body. And then at the end, I'm going to talk about what is a phase 1 trial. Those are the trials in which the drugs are tested for the first time, sometimes in humans or combinations. So those are new treatments or type of treatments that are coming and we are researching now. So what is a clinical trial? A clinical trial in the end is an experiment. Because we have a hypothesis, we want to see if there's a treatment that is better than the last one. We want to know if this treatment is safe, meaning that we can give it to patients without having undue side effects. As it's an experiment that is dealing with people, then there's a very stringent ethical and aspects that we need to make sure that we follow. Most important of it is that the participation needs to be voluntary. So the patients agree to participate in the study, and there are a lot of different safeguards and ethical committees that make sure that whatever the research is going on is fair for the participants. There are two concepts of clinical trials that sometimes are a bit difficult to understand, and I'm just going to explain because it has an effect on the talk. One is the concept of randomization. When you are doing a clinical trial in which you want to test if your new treatment, for example, is better or at least as good as the old treatment, you need to have two groups of patients that are receiving the different treatments. And we know that if you leave the investigators or the patients or the doctors to decide which patient goes into which group, there's a series of biases and a series of assumptions that may make that the two groups are not comparable among them. So instead of letting the participants or letting the doctors choose which patient receives which treatment, this treatment is allocated randomly by a computer system into each of those groups. And then the other concept that is also sometimes a little bit hard to understand for clinical trials is the concept of placebo. There are less and less clinical trials that use placebos because if you have a treatment or an intervention that you know is effective, then it would not be ethical to use placebos. But there are some trials in which is very in which we really don't know if it's better to not give anything rather than give the treatment, and there is a chance that the treatment is actually harmful, and there is a chance that the treatment is actually not effective at all, which is why sometimes we use placebos in these clinical trials. There are different steps and different phases that we call for clinical trials, from when a drug is discovered in the lab to when it's routinely used in patients in the hospitals. And they go from phase 1 to phase 4. Phase 1 is normally when we first use this drug or this agent in patients, and the main focus is safety. What kind of side effects are we getting? Is this drug safe enough to give to patients? In the phase 2, we start to increase the number of patients that are receiving treatment, and we are focusing also in safety, but we start to check if this treatment is actually working. It doesn't matter if treatment is very safe, it's not going to be efficacious, it's not going to make the cancer shrink or not come back. And then if we get positive signals in the phase 2 and the drug is safe, then we move to what is called a phase 3. Phase 3 trials are larger because we want to check what the effect is in a bigger population, in more patients. And this is normally where we use randomized designs in which we compare a prior treatment that is being used to the new treatment that is being used. And we always record safety on all of the side effects to make sure that we get more information about the treatment. But the main focus is the efficacy. Is this new treatment going to be better and we are going to get better outcomes? Normally, the drugs that they are approved and then used routinely in patients go through a phase 3 trials, and then with the results of those phase 3 trials, this is submitted to the regulatory authorities like the MHRA. And then once a treatment is approved, there is a phase 4 in which we have a study, or we continue to look especially for the safety. So that was the kind of bit about the clinical trials, and now we're going to go into renal cell cancer. Just a second, sorry, very sorry. Okay, apologies for that. They just need to do some work on the internet at the hospital. I asked them to wait until we finish the webinar. So sorry. So let's talk about the different research that is going on for kidney cancer. So as you probably know, or some of you will know, and some of you will not know, we define cancer into different stages that go from stage 1 to stage 4. Stage 1 being the most localized one, in which the tumor is smaller, to stage 4 in which the cancer is more spread. So I'm going to talk about these different trials in kidney cancer following these stages. So we're talking about the stage 1 or 2, in which the tumors are smaller, and they normally can be treated and can be cured. We have different options for patients in which they have this small kidney tumor. So for some patients, these tumors are going to grow very slowly, and maybe active surveillance is the best option. And for patients that need treatment, either because the tumor is more aggressive or because it's bigger, we have two types of localized treatment. That can be surgery, and in that case, you can remove either the full kidney, whole of the kidney, or just the bit of the kidney that has the tumor. And there are also new treatments that are called here thermal ablation, but it's just put a needle inside of the tumor, and then you use different mechanical or chemicals processes to destroy the tumor. And the one that is most used in kidney cancer is what is called cryoablation, and that means freezing the tumor. So we put a substance that is very, very, very cold inside of the tumor, and that freezes and burns the tumor. So there are different trials because for some patients, we don't know which of these treatments is the best option. And they obviously have different consequences in terms of side effects and in terms of results. So there are a few trials going on to understand, for example, if you have a small tumor, if it's better to get partial nephrectomy, so only get a part of the kidney out, or the whole kidney. So in theory, getting the whole kidney out may be better in terms of less chances of the kidney coming back. Maybe having less of the kidney removed can have an impact on how good your kidney function will be on the future. And that is a trial that's called partial that is being performed in the UK. And then there's other trials that are looking at if it's better to have surgery and completely remove the tumor, or if just freezing the tumor is good enough to make sure that the tumor does not come back, and you may get less complications as late side effects from the treatment. If we go, so in order to explain the trials for the next stages of the disease, I'm going to just give you an overview of what kind of treatment we're using to treat kidney cancer when it's a little bit more advanced. So all of the treatments that I explained in the previous slide are localized treatments. So they only treat the bit or the organ with the tumor. However, when the tumor is more spread or more advanced, we use what is called systemic therapy or body-wide therapy, in which we give a treatment that goes to the whole of the body. And the treatments that we are using mostly to treat kidney cancer at the moment are based in immunotherapy and or some tablets that we use that are called tyrosine kinase inhibitors. I'm going to call them TKI for ease. So immunotherapy is a type of treatment in which we give an antibody, a drug, that what it does is stimulates the immune cells in the body, and these immune cells are able to recognize and kill cancer cells. So this treatment is boosting your own immune system, stimulating these immune cells to kill the cancer. Kidney cancer, all of the tumors in the body, when they grow, they need to generate new blood vessels because they need blood, they need nutrients, and they need oxygen to grow. And that is something that kidney cancer does very well. So these TKIs, what they do is they inhibit the ability of tumors to grow these vessels and to grow themselves. And then because there is less oxygen and less nutrients, less sugars arriving to the tumor, then this tumor is going to die or not be able to grow. And we use either immunotherapy or TKIs or a combination of both to treat kidney cancer. So with this background, I'm going to talk about locally advanced tumors. So we're talking here about what is called stage 3, in which these cancers can be cured with surgery, that because they're bigger and they may be more aggressive, there is a higher chance for them to come back after the surgery. So within the scientific community, we have tried to decrease and make sure that this tumor does not come back. And this can be done using treatment, and this can be given after the surgery. And we can give, for example, immunotherapies or TKIs after the surgery to try to reduce these risks. There is one immunotherapy that is called pembrolizumab that had a trial that was positive a few years ago, and we are using this as a standard of care in the treatment of kidney cancer. But then there are other trials ongoing for which we're expecting the results very, very soon, and some results are available to try different types of immunotherapy than the pembrolizumab, and also to add new and different drugs to the immunotherapy to make sure that there is less patients that relapse after surgery. And there have been a lot of trials about this, and there are probably going to be fewer of those. But there's one that is going on that is quite interesting. I'm going to talk a little bit later with the cancer vaccine. And something that has not been done that much in kidney cancer, but has been very successful in other tumor types like melanoma, is to try to give some treatment before the surgery to those patients in which the risk of relapse is very high. And the idea behind that is that if there are some cells that have already escaped from the tumor before the surgery, if you start with this body-wide treatment before the surgery, you can start treating those while you are waiting to have the surgery. And also, if you manage to shrink the tumor and make it smaller, the surgery may be easier and you may have less problems and less complications from the surgery. And there are a few trials that are being led by UK investigators that will be coming in the next months and years, in which we give some different combinations of immunotherapy or immunotherapy and TKIs before the surgery to try to reduce the risk of the tumor coming back. If we move to what is called stage 4, at this point, the cancer has spread outside of the kidney. It can be metastatic, meaning that it can have gone to different organs. As I explained, the standard of care, the treatment that we give normally to patients, is either a combination of immunotherapies or a combination of immunotherapy with the TKI. And there were several trials with different drugs that shown that these combinations were better than giving any of these agents on their own. However, for different reasons, the pharmaceutical companies, the industry, they did not do a trial comparing directly a combination of immunotherapies with a combination of immunotherapy and the TKIs. In order to solve this question and to try to get more information about which patient is going to benefit more from one or the other treatment, there was a consortium led by investigators in France and funded by the European Union, and UK centers we are also going to participate. It's a trial that's called CARE1. And this is a randomized phase 3. So if you remember, we are talking about large trial. We're looking at efficacy. And we will have two groups of patients that will be treated either with the combination of immunotherapies and the combination of immunotherapy with a TKI. This is what is called a pragmatic trial. So it's going to be very close to what people receive in the normal setting without many interventions. And we're hoping that it will help us answer which is this treatment. And most importantly, there is also going to be some work looking at the tumor and the blood of these patients, because it may be that some patients that have some characteristics do better with immunotherapy, and some patients that have other characteristics in the tumor will do better with the combination of immunotherapy and the TKI. There are new drugs coming with different mechanism of actions of the ones that we are using. There are some drugs that are called HIF inhibitors, like belzutifan and casdatifan. So these try to target the specific mutations and pathways that are activated in kidney cancer. And there has been some positive results, not overwhelming, with some drugs. And there will be other trials coming with better types of drugs on this field. And then another aspect or another type of drugs that are probably coming very soon is what we call biospecifics. And these are drugs that are combining the immunotherapy properties and the tyrosine kinase inhibitor properties of the different drugs just in one antibody or in one drug. And in this way, we are hoping to maintain the efficacy against the tumor of this strong combination while reducing the side effects and reducing the toxicity for the patients. So I said that at the last bit of the presentation, I was going to talk about phase 1 trials and new treatments. And please allow me to share this video with you that we've prepared in collaboration with the people at our clinical research facility, explaining what the phase 1 trial is. So just give me 1 second. Oops, sorry, I need to share the sound as well. All right.
Sorry, Tony, I don't know whether for anybody else, but I can't hear the audio this time.
No, I was just going to say I can't hear the audio.
All right, let me just start again.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No problem. It's typical, isn't it? We tried just before hopping on and it was all fine.
Yes, we can hear it now.
This video explains what is meant by a phase 1 clinical trial for cancer and answers common questions about what is involved before a particular trial that may be suitable for you is discussed in more detail. Clinical trials are medical studies involving people. You may hear your doctor speak of them in terms of phases, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Each phase is a different step in the journey of developing a new treatment for cancer. A phase 1 clinical trial is the first time a new drug, which has shown promise in a laboratory setting, is tested in people, and may be the first and only way to try a new treatment that is not yet generally available. The priority in a phase 1 trial is safety, to find out the best dose that can be given safely without causing too many side effects. Phase 1 trials also test when a new treatment should be given, such as every day, every week, or once every month, and to see whether the new treatment helps stabilize or shrink a cancer. Because these trials are investigating very new treatments, you have an experienced team, which might include specialist doctors, nurses, researchers, and data managers, working closely together to look after you. For this reason, phase 1 trials are usually conducted in specialist units with the necessary expertise at hand, like the NIHR Royal Free Clinical Research Facility. Phase 1 trials usually involve only a few patients at first who receive a low dose of the drug under close supervision. If all goes well, the next few people have a slightly higher dose, and so on with other people until we know the best dose to use. This takes time and means that some patients who are keen to take part may have to wait a little while for an opportunity to join a trial. All patients interested in taking part must complete certain checks to ensure they are eligible. This is called screening and may involve tests such as weight, blood pressure, blood and heart investigations, scans, and sometimes a biopsy of the cancer. It can take a few weeks for the results to come back, when the research team will arrange a meeting. Depending on the results, not everyone who is screened will be able to take part in the trial. For those who go on to receive treatment, there may be more hospital visits than usual, particularly at the start of a trial, sometimes requiring an overnight stay in or near the hospital. Visits often involve extra blood and urine tests, scans, and sometimes biopsies to monitor the effect of treatment. Costs for extra hospital visits are usually reimbursed. Side effects can happen. Questionnaires on how you are feeling are often used. Some questions may not seem relevant to you, but it's important to try and answer them all as honestly as you can. As well as giving you access to a new treatment that would otherwise not be available, taking part also gives you a named research nurse you can see in person or contact at any time with any questions you may have. There is no guarantee that the treatment will work for you, and there is some uncertainty over side effects, which is why participants are monitored so closely. Your doctor will discuss the trial with you and provide a detailed information sheet about the procedures, risks, and potential benefits. Once you've had time to consider this with family and friends and your healthcare team, you will be asked for your written consent to take part. If at any stage you change your mind, consent is yours to withdraw. You can stop the trial at any time by letting the research team know, and this will not affect your general medical care in any way. If at any stage the research team think that a new treatment is not working or that there is a concern over safety, then the trial would be stopped immediately. When patients with cancer are first offered the opportunity to take part in a phase 1 trial, they are often excited because it offers hope when perhaps other treatments may not have worked. Excitement can lead to anxiety with all the paperwork you are asked to consider. It can become quite daunting. It's normal to be unsure what the best thing to do is at this time. Talk to friends and family and ask anything that matters to you. People who take part in phase 1 trials often say how amazing it is to be part of a study which could lead to the cancer treatment of tomorrow. As well as providing early access to a treatment not yet available, taking part will also guide treatment for others with cancer in the future. Every drug treatment for cancer that is used today around the world has at some stage been tested in a phase 1 clinical trial in specialist centres like the Royal Free Clinical Research Facility.
All right. So just 1 second, I'll go back to presentation. All right. Can I just get a thumbs up if that went back on?
Yes, that's all gone on.
Excellent. So yeah, so that video was an explanation about what a clinical trial is from a little bit more of a patient perspective in terms of what the pathway is and what is required and what we do when we start these trials. And now in the last few minutes, I'm just going to explain what what kind of new treatments are coming that are going through these early phase trials and are very exciting. So you probably heard about cancer vaccines, and cancer vaccines are not going to work for everyone and for all types of cancer, and they're probably going to be limited to specific cancers in specific situations. But one of the situations in which they can be very useful is for this setting after the surgery to reduce the risk. And these vaccines can be personalized or they can be off the shelf. And there's a lot of excitement around personalized vaccines that use the same technology as the COVID vaccine to get information about the cancer that you then present to the immune system to try to make sure that any cancer cell that's left in the body is eliminated by the immune system. We are also testing new immunotherapies, new antibody immunotherapies targeting different aspects of the immune system that they could help boost the immune system effect against the cancer. We are testing combinations of these treatments. For example, there are combinations of immunotherapy with vaccines in which you get a stimulation of the immune system by these two pathways. And then I'm just going to talk a little bit about cell therapy. So cell therapy is a completely different type of treatment. It is also a type of immunotherapy. But in this case, what you're doing is you are getting immune cells from the blood of the patient, and then in the lab we can change those immune cells and make them to specifically recognize some alterations that are present in the cancer cells. And then we can get those out of the body, and once we've changed them or engineered them, we can grow and expand them and then put them back in the patient. And then these, well, they are called CAR T cells. And these CAR T cells, what we're going to do is they're going to recognize every cancer cell that expresses that markers, and they're going to eliminate them. This treatment has worked very well for lymphomas and some sorts of blood cancer because we can determine a marker that is only on those specific cells. However, for solid cancers like kidney cancer, it's a little bit trickier because there aren't any marker that are only expressed in the cancer cells. And the problem will be that these immune cells are going to eliminate all of the cells with that marker. And that can include some healthy cells. We are working on different markers, and myself, we are collaborating with UCLH and with UCL in trying to identify some of those cells or some of those markers that we could use in the future for kidney cancer. And there are some clinical trials in the US, but these are in very, very early phases of development. And to end with, when we talk about research and clinical trials, one of the images that come to mind to a lot of people is that of a guinea pig. And what I try to explain to my patients is that this is completely different, because a guinea pig has no say in what's happening to them, whereas a patient that is participating in a clinical trial has say in what it is. And we need to have a very close collaboration because we need to know what's going on with the patient to make sure that we run the best possible trial. So I like to compare the patients on a clinical trial to a test pilot in which they're trying different prototypes of planes and they're telling the engineers, this is working, this is not working. So I just want to finish by thanking all of the patients that agreed to give their time and participate in clinical trials because they will hopefully help themselves with some of the clinical trials, but if not, they will definitely help us to define the treatments of the future. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions. We have half an hour to go through the questions. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and get you back on, and I'll leave Lara to just make sure that she gets all of the questions from the chat and the Q&As and everything. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Rullan. Some really interesting points there. I think also pointing out the different phases of clinical trials, so people understand how the 4 phases of those trials work, and the potential for trials with trialing immunotherapy versus immunotherapy and TKIs and what that leads to. So I'll just go to the question and answer section now to see if we have any questions. Okay, so there's a question here, Dr. Ann. Someone said, if I was wanting to take part in a trial, how would I go about it? And do I just talk to my team?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So I would say yes. So my first advice would be to go to your team, to the oncologists, the nurses that are treating you, and say, I'm interested in participating in a clinical trial. Is there something that would be suitable for my stage of the disease and of my moment in the treatment pathway? So that may be available in the hospital in which you are being treated, or maybe you may need to be referred to a different hospital. So that's the first point of contact. Then there are other resources. There are clinical trial finders. There are charities like Kidney Cancer UK that can be able to signpost you to different hospitals or to different teams. And there are, so that's what I would do. And then just ask your team, and then just try to get information from charities and others.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, which trial do you think is going to be the most benefit?
I've spoken about a lot of different trials, and they are in different settings, so it's a little bit hard to define what benefit is, but I'm just going to answer that question. The ones that I'm more excited about are the ones that we're talking about giving treatment before the surgery, because all of the treatments that are for patients that have already metastatic or spread cancer, they can be very good, and in some cases have the tumor under control for many, many years. But it's very hard to talk about a cure after the cancer has already spread. Whereas if we're able to make sure that after the surgery, the cancer does not come back, then we're talking about curing those patients, making sure that they don't have a relapse of the cancer in the future. So I'm not sure which one or which drug combination is going to give us the best option. I'm really excited about participating in those trials and about making sure that the tumor does not relapse.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, what percentage of kidney cancer patients are currently participating in trials in the UK?
So that is a very good question. I'm saying from the top of my head, so please don't hold me to it. I would say much less than what I would like, and I would say it's probably around 5%, something like that. I don't think it's much larger than that, but again, there are some data available, publicly available data from the kidney cancer audit around. So I may not be completely exact on the numbers, but I would say somewhere around that.
Gives us a rough idea, yes. Somebody else wants to ask, can you stop before the end of the trial, and would it affect future treatment options already approved?
So I guess that question can be interpreted both two ways. So can you stop, if you are participating in the trial, can you stop before the end of the trial,
yes,
as a personally, or can the trial be stopped early? And the answer to both is yes. So if you are participating in a trial, you feel like you're not benefiting of it, or your circumstances have changed and you don't want to continue to participate in the trial, you can. That means that you're not going to receive the treatment in the trial. You're no longer going to receive the treatment on that specific trial. So what your doctor is going to do is they're going to look for what is the next best option for treatment. That can limit your treatment options in the sense that if, for example, you are getting a treatment with a type of immunotherapy, then you're not going to get a treatment that is very similar to it, because then if there's a reason why you stop this trial, then it means that it wouldn't make a lot of sense to continue to getting that treatment. However, if you stop participating in the trial and it's not related to the side effects or the drug in any way, then you would be able to get a similar treatment. So you can stop it, and then what the doctors will do is will try to look for the next best treatment to give you. And then trials can be stopped early. in fact, there are a series of safe rails that are built in the protocol and the delivery of these trials. And if, for example, for big trials, there are what we call interim analysis that are looking at the data and the safety and the efficacy data as at pre-specified points in the delivery of the trial. And if at any of these points there is concerns for safety, so the drug is being much more toxic than what we expected, or if the numbers say that this trial is very unlikely to be positive, then that trial sometimes is stopped early to make sure that you are not giving patients a treatment that may not work or that may be too toxic, have too many side effects.
Okay, thank you. And lots of questions in now. So the next one is, I'm 35 years old. I have stage 3, grade 4 RCC with sacromatoid necrosis present. I'm currently on my second fusion of Keytruda. Are TKIs available now to add onto my treatment?
So the answer to that is not. So there isn't there. If we're talking about treatment with immunotherapy after surgery, so there isn't currently any combination of drugs that has been approved to use in combination that have been proved to be better than the treatment with Keytruda with pembrolizumab. So there were a lot of different trials with TKIs after surgery, and they did not show benefit. And then the trials that did show benefit are the ones that are with immunotherapy. So there are some trials with combination with not with TKI with another drug that is called belzutifan, that is HIF alpha, that we are hoping that they will present the results quite very early. But that still needs to go through approval by the NHS and by the Medicament Agency, just to make sure that all of the things that the pharma company claims is right, and we can give it. And then once you start the treatment, it's probably is the best thing is just to continue that as the way it has been given. So at the moment, there isn't a possibility of getting combination of immunotherapy with a TKI after the surgery.
Okay, thank you. Next question is immunotherapy the main area of clinical trial? Having had a bad reaction to immunotherapy, would it mean all immunotherapy would cause similar reactions?
So immunotherapy is one of the main pillars for treating kidney cancer. So, for example, if you remember from my talk, I have not spoken about chemotherapy at all because we know that it does not work for kidney cancer. And immunotherapy is something that we know works very well for kidney cancer, and it is kind of the pillar, and a lot of trials are based on immunotherapy combinations. It's not the only type of treatment that we are studying. As I explained, we're trying also different mechanisms of action and different drugs. So if you had a side effect of immunotherapy before with a prior immunotherapy, then that doesn't increase the risk of having side effects to immunotherapy with further treatments. However, immunotherapy is quite a broad word, and there are different types of immunotherapy with different drugs. So it does not mean that if you had a bad side effect to one specific immunotherapy, you are going to have it to a slightly different one, but it does increase the risk.
Okay. And next one is, how long after surgery should you start immunotherapy if you're at a high risk of recurrence?
So that is as I said, the treatment that is available to give after surgery that is approved that has shown benefit is pembrolizumab. And that, according to all of the guidance and the clinical trial, needs to be started in the first 12 weeks after the surgery.
Okay. I've got a longer question here, so I'm going to read this out. What do you think are the hesitations of taking part? And this person says, I was offered to be part of the partial study. I asked my consultant how many patients of his had entered the trial. It was a very small amount. I think the idea of having a random trial left me worried that once the surgeon had been given the direction of which approach to use and he had started surgery, if he noticed something that meant the random approach wasn't the best way forward, he wouldn't have the right to deal with what he found. And she's actually asked as well, why is the window of funding for immunotherapy only open for 12 weeks post kidney removal?
Yeah, so that is really a good question about the partial trial, and that's something that we've discussed in depth with the urology surgeons at my hospital. So surgical trials are also always a little bit more complicated, and then the main thing for a randomized clinical trial is that we need to have what we call is the equipoise, which is a term that means that the two arms, with the knowledge that we have, need to be equivalent in the sense that there needs to be reasonable doubt that there is not one arm that is better than the other. Okay, if that is not true, then that trial should not be running in that specific way, because that means that it wouldn't get ethical approval. Because if you know that there's one treatment that is likely to be, with the evidence that you have, that is likely to be better than the other, then that would not get approval from the ethical committees, and then obviously the urology consultants would not be participating in the trial, because they would say this is much better than the other, or this is thought to be better than the other. We have enough evidence to say that this is better than the other. We shouldn't be doing this trial. So in the case of the partial trial, that is met in the sense that we don't know which of the interventions is better. It is true that is for a specific population that would go into the trial. So there will be some patients that the surgeon has a clear idea that one is better than the other, so they wouldn't offer the trial to that patient. But and I understand that it may be a little bit concerning to say this is something that is allocated at random. However, if at any point within a clinical trial, the treating doctor thinks that following randomization is not the best thing to do for the patient, there's nothing to stop them getting the patient out of the trial and doing what they think is best for the patient. And that's actually something we do in occasions in which, patient is randomized to a treatment for any reason that treatment is not working or is not the best thing for the patient, that trial participation in the trial gets stopped, and then the patient gets out of the trial, and they're no longer used to say if the trial is working or not, and they get what the surgeon thinks is the best treatment for them.
Right. And then that makes sense. Thank you.
And then the other question was, but I do understand the concerns about the randomization there, but is something to discuss with the surgeons. The other question is why the window for immunotherapy is that 12 weeks. So, and there are two reasons for that. The main reason is, so there's one very practical reason, is that when they did the trial for the immunotherapy after the surgery, they did not allow for patients to wait more than 12 weeks to get the treatment after surgery. So after 12 weeks after surgery, we are in unknown territory about if this treatment is going to benefit or not. And the reason why they choose 12 weeks and not 8 or 16 is based on a lot of other trials of treatment after the surgery, in which we know that the longer you wait, the benefit is lower, and that is based on historical other trials with chemotherapy, other tumor types. So that's why they choose the 12 weeks mark.
Okay, thank you. I think this question here we've already sort of covered, but she was actually asking, there are many types of immunotherapy. When one type of immunotherapy is ineffective, will all immunotherapy be ineffective? And I believe we sort of covered that on a question.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were talking more about side effects. Regarding efficacy, again, so once you've had treatment with immunotherapy, there have been a few trials that have shown that having treatment with the same immunotherapy again is probably not going to work, and it's probably not worth it, because you are likely to have side effects without efficacy. Okay, But if it's a different type of immunotherapy with a different drug, or if it's touching a different mechanism of action, again, if your tumor is more responsive to immunotherapy, that's going to be to all types of immunotherapy. But it may well be that your tumor type is not responsive to immunotherapy A, but it may be responsive to immunotherapy B. So the thing is that it needs to be, or we think it needs to be, a slightly different type of immunotherapy to have a chance to work.
Okay, so I've just got another long one, and then I think we'll probably sort of round it off with a couple more questions. This one here says, I have had two surgeries, a radical nephrectomy in 2019, where I was deemed stage 3A, an intermediate risk, and agreed to the Rampart trial, but it could go ahead, followed by a para-aortic lymph node dissection in 2021 for a 12mm reoccurrence. No evidence of disease until August 25. I now have a 6mm bilateral pulmonary nodules and a 12mm omental node where it watch and wait, and they have said either surgery or SABR radiotherapy for lungs is a probable option. What other treatment could be helpful? And she's followed up by saying Rampart could not go ahead, so I've never had treatment, only surgery. Never had treatment, only surgery.
Yeah, I mean, just a bit of a disclaimer. So that's an excellent summary of the case, and you give a lot of information. But I'm obviously not the treating doctor for you, and I have only limited information about you, about what the case is, about what the treatment is. So that's not the full of information. So I can't give a full and fully informed clinical decisions on the base of that. So what you write makes a lot of sense, in the sense that I'm just going to speak generally and not for this specific case. So once the tumor has, so after the surgery, so for kidney cancer, places in which it can go most frequently after surgery is either it can come back where the kidney was, it can go to lymph nodes, it can go to the lung, it can go to the bones, it can go to other places, but the lung and the lymph nodes are the most frequent one. Sometimes small nodules in the chest are very difficult to define and to know for sure if they are cancer or not. Because there are other reasons why people can have small nodules in the chest that are not cancer, and small infections or viral infections, and some of those nodes can increase and then decrease. So we are normally very cautious before starting a treatment that can have a lot of side effects for a nodule in the lung that is very small and is not causing any problems. So in that case, we frequently take a watch and wait approach, in which we monitor those nodules closely, and we only treat them if they grow significantly or if they start to give some symptoms or some problems. And then depending on the size and the location, you can have some local treatments on those nodules that can either be radiotherapy or sometimes cryotherapy or ablation. So I'm not going to comment directly on the case, but that's just a general commentary about how we can treat small lung nodules coming after a surgery.
Thank you. And I think this is probably the last couple of questions before we round it up. So it says post-surgery sepsis and open wounds meant immunotherapy wasn't offered. Would immunotherapy possibly offered later if it was deemed useful for any spread, i.e., can you be offered immunotherapy later in the journey?
Yeah. So that's a very good question. So if for any reason you don't get immunotherapy after the surgery, then you will. I mean, depending on the patient, the specific patient, but the most likely thing is that you will be offered immunotherapy if the cancer comes back. So we know that after 12 weeks, the benefit of getting the immunotherapy to prevent the relapse or the recurrence is unknown, and we don't use it. But if the cancer does never come back, then that's great, you don't need the immunotherapy. If it does come back, if the reason not to have immunotherapy was problems with the surgery and delays, then you can have the immunotherapy afterwards. And in fact, there are some people that decide not to get the immunotherapy after the surgery because they know that they have the chance to get the immunotherapy if the cancer relapses. So yes, so you can get the immunotherapy further down the line. There's no contraindication. That's no problem. The other way around, if you get the immunotherapy and your cancer comes back while you're on immunotherapy, then that means that probably the immunotherapy is not working as well as it should. So you probably will get a slightly or a different type of treatment if the cancer comes back.
Okay, thank you. And I think we'll wait a couple more minutes, see if there's any more questions, but just to round it up, the comments are people that have enjoyed your presentation and the information. The person who asked about the SABR radiotherapy has just said, of course, she appreciates that you can't comment personally, and the CT report for lungs has said concerning for progressive mets, but thanks so much. My surgeon suggested SABR, so thanks so much. But just to say thank you, Dr. Rullan, for a very informative talk on clinical trials and current research.
That's all right, my pleasure. Yeah, I'm glad you found it useful.